All right, everybody. It's the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everybody?
We've got a really special guest today, one of our good friends that we've known for a very, very long time, from lots of different avenues in life, Mr. Dennis Leonard.
Right, here we go. All right. Born May 8th, 1951 from Brooklyn, New York, attended Oceanside High School in Long Island, played college baseball at Iona College, drafted in the second round in the 1972 draft by the Kansas City Royals, only Royals pitcher to record 3 20-win seasons. He is the all-time leader in complete games with 103, also with 23 shutouts, holds the single-season records for 40 starts, 21 complete games, 294 innings pitched, and 242 strikeouts. From 1975, from 75 to 81, he won 130 games, which was the most by any right-handed pitcher in the major leagues. Inducted into the Kansas City Royals Hall of Fame in 1989. He married high school sweetheart Audrey in 1971, who we all know and love.
Yes, we do.
All-around awesome guy, Dennis Leonard. Welcome to the show, man.
Well,
yeah, buddy.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Welcome.
Up until about a month or two ago, I didn't even know you guys did things like this.
Because we didn't.
Oh,
We started doing this about 2 months ago.
Oh, maybe that's the
Right,
reason.
exactly.
So it's kind of fun to be with you.
Yeah, we said, we should just start hanging out with some of our buddies and let's just talk about some random stuff and see how it goes. And it's been just awesome for the last 2 months.
Well, that's good. That's good. Keep it going.
Yeah, we've had some really good, some of your buddies on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Audrey's been hitting us on the side, saying, "When's Leo going to be
She
here?"
has me, yeah. That was pretty cool.
That's okay. Audrey was very fortunate enough. Audrey reminds me a lot of my wife. Very quiet, laid back, have to pull information out of them.
No spitfire.
Oh, most definitely.
Not offering opinions on anything. But she did
Not
help
very
us.
talkative.
No, not at all.
No, very low key. She did provide a couple tidbits of stories that it's going to be pretty
She
fun.
provided stories?
She did.
Now, when did you talk to her behind my back?
This morning.
This morning.
Now, you asked me how much time do I have?
Right.
It's just
It just
getting
got
shorter
shorter.
and shorter.
Well, I'm joking aside, let's talk about that because I know we've hung out quite a bit down in Fantasy Camp and Surprise, but you and Audrey met at a very young age.
Yeah, we were 15 years old.
Yeah.
I went to a parochial girls' school, and she was in public school. And I swore I was not going to go to a Catholic high school because, in the Catholic grammar school, they didn't have the things, quote, that I liked, gym and all these different things.
Right.
We played tag in the yard, in the schoolyard. So all my other friends that went to public school, they tell me, oh, yeah, we did this in gym. We were playing basketball. We did this. And I said, that sold me. So you had to take a test growing up in New York to try to get into a Catholic high school. Okay. And basically, when I went in for this test, I just went A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, and I just went down the line. That's the first time I was ever first taking a test. I handed it in. I said, there is no way. And lo and behold, I was on a waiting list for one. So
Wow.
I wound up going to 9th grade. We didn't have a high school in town, so I went to 9th grade. And lo and behold, we met in a Spanish class. Mr. Berzon.
That's ninth. That's how you met Audrey in 9th grade?
9th grade.
Wow.
Was she helping out with homework and stuff?
Oh, heck no.
No.
The best thing she ever did after, I think, was a sophomore year, she got into the business end of things.
Okay.
And, P.S., we had the Hallmark stores, and
Right.
she worked for, Abraham and Strauss and, in the city as an assistant buyer. So, it worked out well for her.
Absolutely.
And then she always thought I was crazy because when we were dating, she says, well, what are you going to do? I said, I want to be a professional ball player. I don't think she even knew what a baseball was.
She does now.
So
Yeah, I guarantee you.
Right. So when did it start setting in? So you guys got married in 1971. You got drafted in the second round in 1972.
Right.
When did it start setting in with her? Was it when you guys were moving to the different minor league cities and she was going along with? Or?
Well, not really. If she gave you stories, I could tell some.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we were dating in high school, and, when you're that young, the one thing I always told her, if I have a game, I have practice, I'm going. So don't make plans. If you want to go to a dance, you want to go to a movie, I said, you're on your own. This is the way it's going to be.
This is the priority.
And, you have your little breakups, for a week here and a week there. So I think everybody went through that when they were, in their teens. Mm-hmm. And finally, when she never even seen one of my high school games. She never came to one of my high school games.
No kidding.
And lo and behold, I get to college, and she says, man, he might be kind of serious about this. And she started coming to the games on the weekends with my dad, if I was pitching. And after that, she saw there was some interest. She saw scouts around, not that she knew what they were at the time, but she kind of got wind of what was going on. And, I was at her house in Valley Stream, New York, when the draft was taking place. And I got drafted. I said, well, here's our chance. And the only thing you can do is ask for a chance. And she had some... Being a New York girl, her first stop in Kingsport, Tennessee, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit different for her.
No doubt.
I bet.
It was a little bit different,
Right.
Culture shock. I mean,
well, yeah, we kind of stayed in a hotel for a little bit, and then we wound up going to a trailer court.
Yep.
And a mobile home. And in the middle of the night, it was one of these places in Kingsport, Tennessee, that if you put the trash out, the raccoons find it at night. Then you hear the clamoring
right.
of trash cans, and I think she freaked out. And I went on a road trip. A guy got sent down from Waterloo.
Yeah.
His name was Mike Lowen, and he came down to Kingsport with his wife, Lynn, and they stayed in the same area we did. So Mike and I were on the road. So Lynn and Audrey, they were going to go watch us play. I forget which town we were going to. Well, Lynn had a pickup truck. And if you can picture somebody from rural Florida with a pickup truck, they're going to have a gun in a rack in the truck.
Sure.
Right.
And she did. So Audrey has never even seen a gun before. And all of a sudden she's coming to see us, and there's a shotgun hanging in the rearview mirror, in the back window. And so she's like, oh, boy. But as it turned out, about a day or two later, I basically took Mike's place. They sent him from Waterloo. Then I only spent about 2 or 3 weeks in rookie ball, and then I went to take his place in Waterloo.
Wow. So you're talking about the draft. So you're watching it. You're at Audrey's house or her.
Well, actually, they didn't even have it.
I guess it wasn't on TV.
No.
So you got a call.
I got a
when
call.
You were there at the house. So, I mean, that was your second round. Right before it was Jamie Quirk, right?
Yeah, Jamie was number one.
Yeah.
I was number two. And, everybody has a story about the draft. But I had my high school coach was pretty instrumental in the things I did. I mean, he really gave me the basis, even though he wasn't a pitcher. He gave me the basis of throwing a curveball, and it didn't start breaking until college, really. But there was a Milwaukee Brewers scout that wanted to talk to me in front of my coach. So I went there, and he says, well, we want to tell you if you're available in the third round, would you sign for $15,000? And I just wanted a chance. I said, well, sure. Well, lo and behold, here comes the draft. The Royals picked me in the second round, and I'm like, yes.
More money.
Yes.
More money.
Right.
So John Shearholtz was basically, at that time, he was assistant farm director, and he came with the scout that scouted me and met us in Valley Stream at my in-laws' house, and lo and behold, he offered me $10,000.
Oh, my gosh.
Less than the 15 the Brewers were talking.
You're like, wait a minute, I was going to get this.
Hey, I'm getting to the rest of the
story.
Right?
Yeah.
So I said, well, why did you draft me? He goes, well, don't you want to be a Royal? I said, listen. I said, if the Brewers drafted me in the third round, I would have got $15,000. I'm in the second round, like 42nd or 44th in the country, and I'm getting $10,000. I said, that doesn't add up. So, then we didn't have agents or anything. So I went with my dad. My dad was there, and we went in a room. We're talking. Then we come back out. I don't even know what we talked about, but he says, okay, we'll give you $16,000. I said, okay, it sounded good. But if you get to AA, you get, I think, you get a bonus. Then if you go to AAA, you get a bonus. And then if you make the big leagues, you get a bonus. So then they're going to pay for my last year of college. So they added all that stuff up and said, you're actually signing for something like $57,000. And I said, John, I said, I grew up and I had to go work to get the things I like fishing poles and this, that, and the other thing. I got, necessities of life, obviously, from my parents. I said, the money in my hand is my money. I said, if I don't make Double A, you can throw that out. Triple A, throw that out. He goes, don't you think you can make it? You know, you can turn anything around. I
Sure.
said, that's not the point. I said, what I'm getting out of all this is $16,000. Don't tell me I'm getting 47, but lo and behold, guess what?
Right.
I
You
did
made
get
it.
all the bonuses.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to college, but I got all the bonuses.
Like a
That's
master
amazing.
negotiator there.
Exactly. Exactly. And how old were you? 20?
Let's see. Then, I was 20. I turned
Wow.
21 in May.
Wow.
Wow. Well, you know, before that draft
No, I was
happened,
21. I had to be 21.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
21.
I mean, you're growing up in New York. Obviously, the Royals, this is before the true rivalry sets in, but you're growing up a Yankees fan, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, Mickey Mantle, I could probably say was my idol. You know, I always watched the Yankees. They were always on
Yeah.
TV. Obviously, it was black and white TV, but they were always
That's all
on.
they're wearing anyways, black
I
and
know.
white.
And then the Mets came into existence. And actually, I'm glad they're in the National League because I really switched over a little bit more to the Mets. As far as going to games, it was a little bit more convenient to go to Shea Stadium than it was to Yankee Stadium. So I probably went to more Met games. And obviously, at the time, you know, 69 was kind of a crazy year. Not only did I graduate high school, but the Mets win the World Series.
Yeah.
The New York Knicks win the NBA championship. And the New York the New York Jets win the Super Bowl.
That's a good time to be a New York sports
I'd
fan.
say so.
Yeah,
And
it
also-
was crazy. I mean, the way everything turned out in 69. And you know what the kicker of it was?
What's that?
Guess what team all of them beat?
Hold on. Baltimore?
Every team that the New York teams beat was Baltimore.
Yeah.
No
Did you see-
kidding.
Look at that.
The Knicks
Pulling that out.
Yeah, the Knicks beat
Nice.
the Bullets.
Yeah.
The Jets beat
The Colts.
The Colts.
Colts.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
Joe Namath
Yep.
beat
Yep.
the Colts.
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
So it's kind of weird.
That's crazy. Well, and also in '69, isn't that when the Mets had like
Seaver.
the Seavers? And
Oh
the
yeah,
Nolan
that was their,
Ryans?
you know, in the beginning, you know, the Nolan Ryans, the Tom Seavers, Gary Gentry, Jim McAndrew, you know, so they had a lot of players that, you know, made pretty good names to themselves in the future too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was AO on that team yet?
No.
Okay, because he was on the Mets a couple years after.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know because I think they had Ron Swoboda in right field, Tommy Agee in left, and I forget who was in center.
Well,
Cleon Jones maybe.
Yeah.
You
Ball
mentioned
team.
AL.
Yes.
You got a pretty tight relationship with Mr. Otis.
Yeah. Oh, we go back a long way,
I'd
obviously.
say so, yeah.
You know, and he always says this. I don't really think it's true, but he got hit with a pitch one time, and he says, I want you to get somebody. And when I hit Don Baylor, Amos really thinks I did it
In his
because
honor.
he wanted me to, and I kind of hit Baylor in the back. And from this day forward, he says, you're the only one who ever stuck up for me. If I told you to do this, you did it. And I said, you're right, Amos. I did.
You're right. I did it
You're
just
exactly
for you.
right.
I'm
But,
You know,
defending your honor.
What's really
Just for
weird?
you.
What's really weird? When you're playing, obviously you're on the road with all these guys. Then when you get home, you live in the same area. You meet them at the ballpark, but you want to be with your family, so you don't really intermingle that much, family related. But it's really odd when you get out of baseball, and really in Kansas City, you consider there's a lot of former players here. Now Amos lives in Las Vegas. But like Big John, I really never hung with him. I consider him a really good friend now.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
people that, you know, you didn't really hang with, all of a sudden you retire and, you know, you get a little bit older and, you know,
The
it's
season
a
of life, yeah.
totally a different situation. You know, you become more friendly, I would guess.
Sure.
Not that you weren't friendly, but, you know, you become a situation where, you know, I'll call John a lot. We do clinics together, you know, with the Royals. And I know I talked to him the other day over at a suite and, yeah, I'd always check on him and see how his health's doing. And
Right.
so, you know, it's a little bit different once you get out of the game because, you know, we were all brothers when we played and you lose track of people, but these guys are in town.
Well, it's amazing, you know, the guys that we talked with, you know, that whole era, you know, from the 70s and 80s, it seems like a lot of guys just stayed in Kansas City, right? They hung around here.
Yeah, there was a good number of them. And you got to remember back in those days, you know, in the mid-70s, early 80s, we didn't have the freedoms that these ball players have today. We're the ones basically that got them their freedoms with arbitration and free agency and everything else. And when you look at the Royals, we were together as a group probably longer than any of the other groups combined.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was a lot of us together for 8-10 years, which is unheard of nowadays. I mean, somebody goes and somebody stays, and so back then I think we had more of a kind of close-knit team.
It's a
we
baseball
all got
family,
along,
yeah.
and the greatest thing, really, the wives got along. So
That makes
Which is
things a
important.
lot better.
Which is important because I remember several years ago at a fantasy camp. I mean, all the wives were hanging out, like McRae's wife, and I think Audrey are pretty close.
Yeah, and Belva,
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, at the suite the other night, Amos was there, Willie, and Al Fitzmaurice, you got Jan.
Jan,
So it was like John was there, Janice. So when the wives get talking, it's one of those things. I give Audrey a half hour because usually I say, okay, you want to leave? She goes, okay. Then I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So I said, here's the half hour. We're going to leave.
60 minutes later.
Yeah, I'm just giving you the heads up. We're going to leave here soon, but I know it's going to be a half hour. So if I know I want to leave in a half hour, just give it that little leeway.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you were talking about, kudos to you for hitting all your bonuses coming up through the minors, which was really amazing. But there was one stop, and this was out there. Audrey helped us with this, but tell us about. I believe it might have been in Waterloo. It was one very beginning of your career where you threw like a no-hitter and hit a home run.
Yeah.
Was that your first start?
No, it
Class
wasn't
A?
it wasn't my first start at Waterloo, but I did, and it's kind of funny. I threw 2 no-hitters. I didn't ever throw any in the big leagues, but I threw 2 in the minor leagues, and in both those games, I hit home runs.
No kidding.
That's incredible.
That one in Waterloo, and then I had another one that was when I was playing in San Jose, and we were playing against the Mets farm team in Visalia. And actually, that was the closest I've ever came to a perfect game. I walked the first guy and then retired the next 27.
Holy cow.
So that's a question right there. Would you rather walk the first guy or just go through all the game and unfortunately walk the last guy?
I think I'd rather walk the last guy.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, because you still have a chance. You don't have a chance when you walk the first guy.
That's a good point.
That is good. Well, yeah, you're talking about that group. So before you got here, we were kind of going through that list. In particular, you, George, Frank, Split,
Wathan,
Duke, like decade plus, one team, one core unit playing together for 10. I mean, that's an incredible feat.
Well, it is. That was kind of a little trivia question I used to ask people. How many people signed with the Royals and spent their whole career with the Royals? And, they'll obviously guess George.
Sure.
Obviously guess Frank. They'll obviously, me asking the question, probably you.
Right.
Then Split. But the one they very seldom ever get is John Wathan.
Interesting.
They don't think of John Wathan, but he spent his whole career here.
I mean,
And
coached in other areas, but
and now you got another one to add to the list.
Alex.
Years later,
Yeah.
Alex Gordon.
pretty special.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that spent most of their career there, like, say, Gubazar. He was here almost all his career, but 1 year he went to play with the Angels.
yeah.
So there's a couple of
that's
them
right.
that just left. Maybe it was just for 1 year, but if you put it under the category of being signed by a team and staying with the team for the end of your career, there's not very many.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I remember one thing that you've told us down at Fantasy Camp, which kind of blows my mind. You talk about, if you think about every person who's ever played in the major leagues, that you could fit him inside of Royal Stadium.
Oh, definitely, with
Right.
a lot of room to spare.
Yeah. Which blows my mind after all these years and years of baseball, and how rare that is to actually make it to the major leagues.
Oh, it is. I mean, but you know what you just look for an opportunity. And when it comes along, you got to make the best of it. And even when I coach little league kids, they all wanted to be major leaguers. I said, well, first of all, you got to be a high school player. And I said, you're playing against all these kids. By the time you get to high school, if they all keep playing, you're all going to be competing for a spot on that team. And if you make it, look how much better off you are than the other kids. Then, if you get a chance to play college, you look at all the high school kids that can't play in college. And then if you do have the opportunity to sign the minor leagues, and there's tons of those kids. Right. But you at least get an opportunity. If you make the big leagues, you're a lucky dog.
Yeah,
big
for
time.
sure.
Well, and we also always like to talk about leadership, mentors, as young people, going through the ranks. So who was one or two of like the mentors as you were going through? I believe one that I was researching on, a gentleman by the name of Steve Boros.
Okay, well, he was my manager.
Manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, when I left Kingsport, I went to play for Steve in Waterloo.
Okay.
And I didn't have a car then or anything, so we was staying. We knew there was only about a month of that season left because when you sign in June, the minor league season ends in August, the end of August. So he would always pick me up and drive me to the ballpark, make sure I got home, make sure Audrey did. And then at that time, he wasn't married yet, but he was, I guess, his girlfriend or fiance, Charla. Audrey and Charla became really good friends. I made a decision. I said, I want to be a Major League ball player. I trained in New York in that cold weather. It was horrible running around in the gym. So I said, I'm going to go to Florida this winter and train in warm weather. And, we did. And a couple years later, after 75, Steve got called up with Jack McKeon, I think, in 74. And then I got called up at the end in September 74, but then Steve was there in 75. And then we both lived in Sarasota right around the block from each other. So we go fishing a little bit. He wanted me to play tennis, but that wasn't my gig, But, I took him fishing a couple of times, and he was a big supporter of me. For instance, when I was in the California League, I wanted to play in the winter ball, and he got me to go to Puerto Rico. And normally when you go play winter ball, I'm considered an imported player. And very seldom do they have somebody from A-ball that will go and they accept them in winter ball. But he told Jack McKeon was the manager, he says, he can handle it. And that leads into another story. I was already married, Audrey's pregnant.
We go to Puerto Rico.
We go to Puerto Rico, and she comes with me. And the owner of the team, I played in Arecibo, and the owner of the team was a doctor. So he was all hopped up. He says, "Oh, you can have the baby here. This way you'll be a native, and if he ever plays baseball, he'd not be an imported player." So Audrey didn't know what was going on. She walked through this hospital. It was like an open-air hospital. You got
just like
the psycho ward walking around, the maternity ward. So Audrey says, "Hell with this. I'm getting on a plane going back to New York."
So she left.
So she left and went back. But I got off to a good start. And, the baby was due, which is my oldest son, Dennis, is supposed to be due somewhere about the end of November. And they usually gave you a little bit of time off. So I went home because Audrey gained, she was pretty big. And I didn't want to say, So anyway.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Well, she grew. I got us hear the rest of the story she told you about me.
Nothing too bad. Nothing too bad.
But anyway, I went and I'd get home and, she was kind of not helping me out by not having a baby on time. And the next thing I know, it's, December, and they're calling me up, "When you coming back?" I said, "It's stupid now. I can't come back because it could be any day now."
Sure.
Well, it wound up being December the 25th.
Wow. Oh, Christmas. There you go.
Yeah, he was born that night. And, I said, okay. Then I left 2 days later and went back to Puerto Rico and got a chance to pitch a couple more times. But it was kind of funny. The people there really didn't want me, and all of a sudden, "When's he coming back?"
Right.
Then actually, I went back there in 1975, even though I pitched in the big leagues.
Wow.
Because you really enjoyed your time down there, didn't you?
Where
in Puerto Rico.
Well, yeah. Well, when I left,
Playing in warm weather.
Well, not only that, but I was living in Florida also at the time. But when I'm making $750 a month in A-ball, and I'm going there getting almost $2,000.
Wow.
In cash.
Yeah.
Guess where I like to play the most?
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
Big difference.
But I was kind of thinking if they had a league in the summer too, I might kind of switch and play over in Puerto Rico.
No
For
kidding.
sure.
That's a big deal.
But it was a big stepping stone for me to play there because I was playing, out of A-ball, I was playing against a lot of AAA players, AA players and big leaguers that were kind of, bench players. So, competing with them, it gave me a good opportunity and came out well.
Exactly. All right, so this is these are none too bad from Audrey, just to let you know. But she did mention that on your pitching days that you're a little superstitious.
I think almost every player has a little bit of superstition in them.
For sure, I would agree.
Where
are you going with this?
What were some of the
what I usually ate?
Yep, she said talk about from eating to getting ready, and something about the clubbies touching his shoes.
Well, normally, and how do you get a superstition? For some reason, in the minor leagues, I ate steak and green beans, and won. So I said, well, let's try it again. And I won. So that became kind of my game time meal. You know, I'd eat around 3 o'clock. Then I come to find out that you're not supposed to eat that because it doesn't, whatever it does for you, it's the next day. You know, you're supposed to, like Larry Goro would always eat pasta. You know, you get that.
The carb.
Carb thing. I didn't know that. I said, it's your mind that's helping you. People, you know, don't realize, you know, if you think you can do it, you know, it's not going to happen all the time, but you better be positive when you go out there.
Absolutely.
So I had my own little routine, you know, when I got to the ballpark, and one of them, you know, just like when you guys in fantasy camp, if you have your spikes, you know, the club, you'll clean them and everything else. But there in the big leagues, you know, they'd polish them, you know, with that scuff coat because everybody had blue spikes. But I always had to redo my spikes before I went out to pitch. So, you know, I'd go in the training room and think about the team that I was playing because you play the same guys all the time. I try to go over mentally in my mind, you know, okay, so-and-so's leadoff hitter. Does he like to bunt? You know, this guy might hit and run. This guy might steal. So, and I'm sure you guys went through it. If you ever played basketball, the best I can explain it, where you throw up a shot and you just turn around and run the other way. You'd see it going in before it goes in.
Right.
So it was really amazing going through, quote, the lineup, which I knew that I was going to be facing. There were situations that actually happened.
Played out
That I rehearsed in my mind. So, you know, that little part of it, you know, really helped. And after that, you know, I'd polish my shoes, get dressed, go out to walk, and then I always looked up. You know, on the way in, after I warmed up, and Orgy was really good about being there. Like, if the game was at 7:35, she was there at 7:34.
She was amazingly on time.
Right.
Yes,
by a minute.
because you know, as I walked in from the bullpen, I'd always look up because I knew where the family section was, and she'd be there.
Right on time. That's awesome.
Yeah. Would you wave at her or anything?
No, I just kind of flipped my glove.
Yeah.
There's your little signal.
I couldn't get that chummy. You know, like, hi, honey.
No. That's when you hear about
that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, you hear about that in the clubhouse for sure. For sure. Well, what I like about that, Leo, is you're talking about envisioning your success, right? Like you're talking about actually putting a game plan. It's whether you're a professional athlete or you're running a business or you're doing anything. Or these, you know, Drew's out here selling lemonade, right?
Right.
On the front steps today, having a plan to how you're going to be successful is really, really important. And sometimes just flying from or shooting from your hip doesn't necessarily work, even for a professional athlete. So that was a really cool insight that you're going through the lineup, envisioning, okay, this guy, I'm going to throw these pitches in this sequence. And then, like you said, sometimes it plays out just like you envision it.
Yep, it does. And by the way, Darren.
Yes.
Drew said that he's not going to school Monday. He's making a lot of money at the lemonade stand.
He's a little nervous about going to high school. And
I would be too. Yeah. I remember.
Oh, exactly. That's a big change. That's a big change. Well, all right. So here's the one thing. Another thing that she did mention is, I think it was after maybe the first playoff game.
Is this the bus?
The bus. That something happened like after.
Oh, that I puked?
Yeah.
I would just jump right into this.
Hey, I didn't piss in the bus.
Right.
I think puking was a little bit better than peeing in the bus with all the women.
Right.
And I'm not going to say who did that, but he did it.
It happened.
Oh, it did happen.
Oh, interesting.
No
and
kidding.
as you go like that, you know, the bottom of the bus has those rubber, you know, those mats.
Yeah.
And they got little grooves in them.
And it just flows.
Like the river runs through it.
Well, we didn't have a bus with a toilet, so somebody had to go. They went.
Wow. That didn't come up earlier.
No.
That wasn't me. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what happened?
Yeah.
When I think back about it, when we lost in Yankee Stadium, I was staying with my in-laws. We had my oldest son at the time, not my second one. So everybody after that game that was in the city, they all went out. You know, it's the end of the year. Probably had a few too many cocktails. Now we were getting to board the plane, and I'm there all. I didn't have nothing. You know, I wasn't with them. So everybody's like, ugh. And I said, come on, guys, we'll get them next year. Let's go have something to drink. So on the flight night, to this day, I cannot ever think about drinking champagne.
Oh,
the only thing that they would serve us on the ground was champagne, you know, in those little glasses.
Right.
So, you know, I had 4 or 5 of them real quick. And once we got off the ground, at that time, I liked to drink scotch.
Okay.
So I think the stewardess was getting tired. I'd have scotch and water. Then there was not a lot of water, I think, and then there was no water. and I felt fine. I mean, on the plane.
Right.
And I don't eat Swiss steak anymore either.
Only takes one time.
And then not only that, my son didn't like it, so I ate his too.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
So I'm like, okay. And I walked off that plane, and I mean, something that felt like somebody hit me in the head. And I was just going straight ahead. And, back then there was a lot of fans that met you there, and they had the little ropes.
Mhm.
I was going right through the ropes. My wife, was pulling me this way. And I got on the bus, and I'm like, I don't feel good. And she's pushing me off her shoulder. I said, I don't feel good. Get away from me. Get away from me.
I can hear her now.
And, so Steve Boros was there and took my son Dennis and kind of sat him up in the front. And I said, and then he went and got me a paper bag, like that's going to help. But it did for a minute before it got wet and it went through. And lo and behold, my wife, she says, oh, you're embarrassing me. I said, I don't give a damn who I'm embarrassing right now. So I threw up on the bus a couple times.
Oh,
I
man.
got it in the bag, then the bag broke, and then it was on the floor. Then we got off the bus, and Tom Poquette was with us, and Pokey, that was my closest teammate at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we go in the ballpark, and we're going around. I don't know why. You get sentimental. I want to go to the bullpen. So, they have those circular things. I'm out there looking at the bullpen. Thank God he was with him. I might have rolled down that little deal.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to the clubhouse, and I'm like, oh, the trainer's there. I said, God, what do you got for that stomach? And he said, oh, God, they have big tablets, Gelucel or something. They're big tablets. They almost look like an Alka-Seltzer tablet, but I didn't know you're supposed to chew them, and I try to swallow them. Guess
Swallow
what?
the
I
dry
puked
tablet.
again.
That's a rough day, Leo.
I puked again, and I'm like, oh, God. I got home and laid down, and Jim Wolford was on the team, and we were going to leave 2 days later to, go back home, and Wolfie was going to have a party. And I said, okay, we'll go. And then serving wine, I go, oh, that's too close to Champagne. I'm done. I said, I got to drive back to Florida tomorrow. So it was, it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
But you know what? We talk about friendships and always making stories, right? You have your buddies that look out for each other, and there may or may not have been a time that Bobby and I have been out. That's just pure speculation. But, so you were pretty close with Tom Poquette, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us real quick, was there one morning that he was missing and his wife, Jane,
Oh, that's
called
another
you?
story.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
I
is
know
a
where you
good
got
one.
that one from.
The number one source.
Good job, Audrey.
Do you remember a guy, you might not, his name was Bobby Floyd, played for the Royals. He was an
No.
infielder. Well, he had a house in Raytown, and Pokey rented it from him. Well, I was living in Blue Springs. And after that game that we lost again to the Yankees, we went over, I think it was a Holiday Inn right across the street at that time. And there was a couple of the trainer and Jim Valvano and some of the people from college were there. And, we kind of drank a lot at the clubhouse. Then we went over there, and the next thing, he had Poquette his car, I had mine. I got home. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and next thing I know, we get a call from Pokey's wife, Jane, where's Tom? And I'm like, out. And all of a sudden I woke up. I said, what do you mean? He left when I left. And the next thing I know, I just jumped out of bed. I didn't feel like I even had a drink the night before. I was concerned,
so
thinking
concerned.
that he might have got into a wreck somewhere. And I'm kind of tracing the tracks. We go down I-70 where he might go, and then we down this road where he might go, this one. So I said, Jane, I don't know what to tell you. I said, I was with him, but he was going home. So we kind of drive Jane home, and there's Pokey sitting in the room with a cocktail.
At the house?
And at the house
In
there
Raytown?
In Raytown. I said, you son of a gun. What in the world are you doing? Where did you go? He says, I went to Lake Jacomo and sat on a rock and watched the sunrise. I said, you
my
flipping idiot. I said,
gosh.
we're out here. Jane woke me up. We're out looking for you. I thought you were dead, and you're sitting here. Hey, how's everybody
How about
going?
that sunrise?
Having a
Major leaguer
cocktail.
Tom Poquette just sitting on
I'm
the rocks
like,
in Lake
oh,
Jacomo.
Lordy. I'm like, that ain't good. So I said, Jane, he's all right. I'm going back to sleep.
Wow. That's
good stuff.
yeah, that's a good
That's
ending.
a Pokey story. See, and he's in Wisconsin now, so he's not going to hear it.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, so kind of back to your playing days or staying there. So you're known as, you were really known as the first true ace of the Royals.
Right.
I mean, Buzz obviously was kicking start, getting off the ground, running, kicking butt. He gets bit by the injury bug, and that's kind of where you really stepped up, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah. Just having the opportunity to do it. It wasn't, for a short period of time. Like when I got called up in '74, that was before, Steve actually was, blew out his shoulder. And I'm sure he could tell you when it probably was. But, back then we were throwing 130, 140 pitches a game.
Oh, my gosh,
it didn't bother us. But there was one particular game, I'm not sure if it was against the Angels. I know it was on the West Coast, either the Angels or the A's, where he pitched something like 14 innings, and he must have thrown 190 pitches.
Wow.
Something like that. He was in the game the whole time.
Unbelievable.
And then, the next year, it seemed like he was having some problems. And, P.S., because I see him on occasion, and I said, with the technology I have now, with the way they can do it arthroscopically, he said that thing was so torn up that there's no other choice. They didn't have all that procedure back then. So, he was kind of, I used to see him in the training room in the little doctor's office in the back, and I hate needles. I am deathly afraid of needles. And I'd always see Buzz, if I kind of walked in there and the door was open, he was getting those cortisone shots in his shoulder, and they put it like, what's the numbing thing, Xylocaine or something to numb it.
Yeah.
Because if you never got a cortisone shot, it's like a bendy needle, and they stick it in and go this way and this way.
Because you got to get in all the joints and everything.
Yeah, they keep shooting it all around the area, and they left a little vial in there, and then they changed this, and I'm like, oh. I'm ready to puke. I said, good luck, Buzz. I'd walk out of there. I said, I'm going to polish my shoes again.
I got to go polish my spikes.
Right.
But it was kind of a shame because, I would have had the opportunity, even if Buzz was there, I think. But, you can't change what happened. But if you look at the staff that we had, if we had a healthy Steve Busby, and the other guys, the Splits, the Mees, and we would have had one heck of a pitching rotation. We had a pretty good one.
It was already good, but
yeah.
If everybody was super healthy,
but losing
absolutely.
Buzz was tough, and he tried to hang on as long as he could. And Whitey gave him a shot in St. Louis, and it just didn't work out.
Right, just too much. So you were like an absolute workhorse back in the day, Dennis. Like,
I had that in my notes too.
Yeah,
just workhorse.
I just want to repeat some of the things that I did in the intro at the very beginning. But think about this in today's standards of how pitching staffs are ran and, starters lasting 4 or 5 innings, right? So just one more recap on this. So single season record for 40 starts. Amazing.
And you know what? I got rained out in one. I should have 41.
Look at that.
We were in Minnesota, and we got rained out in the second inning, so that was that. I lost that start.
41, all right.
Could have been 41, but 21 complete games, almost 300 innings pitched. That's unheard of now. Right.
Oh, it's definitely unheard of now. Obviously the game has changed. They had a function, the Diamond of Dreams, over at the ballpark the other night, and they had a lot of the current players, and I got a little chance to talk to Bubik and Keller, and Steve Fiziak was there, and he says, "Yeah, Leo, he had this and this and this." And they're going, "Wow, I said, "Listen, guys, you're not given the opportunity to do that." I said, and I said, when I was coming through this, I was in games where I gave up 4 and 5 runs but completed them, because we won 8-5. Or, we didn't have a 10-man bullpen. We had 10 pitchers, period.
Right.
We had 5 starters. And in the beginning, we actually went with a 4-man rotation, which I really liked because I was very fortunate that my arm bounced back really quick. And, I like that. So that's where probably that 40 starts came in because we were pitching a 4-man rotation.
Sure.
But, I'm telling these guys, hey, just go out and have fun. I said, you can't control what the manager does, but you can control what you do. I said, and, the only one you got to be answered to is yourself.
Right.
Because if I had a good game, I'd always take something out of that game where I can improve. If I had a bad game, I'd always take something out of that game that I actually had a little bit of success with. And sometimes it was pretty tough. It might be one pitch to get a ground ball or a double play. So if you ask Audrey something, my highs weren't real high, my lows weren't too low. So every time I left the ballpark, and then, if I wake up in the morning and brush my teeth and I said, hey, I did everything I could, I'd let it go. And there's a lot
That's
of
a
pitchers.
valuable
That's what I
lesson.
try to
That's-
tell these guys is, hey, then speak to the press. Don't avoid them when you're doing bad, because they can be your worst enemies. And you're lucky you're here, because it's not as bad as the New Yorks, the Chicagos, the big places.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I said, but go along with them. I said, and, but as long as you can answer to yourself, that's all you have to do.
What a
Yeah.
valuable lesson
That's like
to
golden
those young
nugget.
players and to anybody listening, really. I mean, you're doing something great.
And it doesn't it doesn't necessarily mean when you're a professional athlete or
Right.
you're in sports.
Anything.
It's in life.
Absolutely.
Because there's nobody that's going to be, on roll forever. You're going to have good times and you're going to have some bad times. And, it's easy to roll with the flow when you're having good times, but how do you handle, when you're not
The
successful?
adversity, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Adversity. And that's the thing that is the difference between, I think, the guys that have longevity in the big leagues and the ones that just last a little bit because, they just can't get over that hump.
Somebody
That's what I
else
said.
that we had on the show said something to the same effect, that they basically thought it was the longevity piece. I forget who said it, but the longevity piece was not so much about your physical ability. It was about the mental
Mental.
part.
Okay.
It might have been George, actually.
And be able to forget.
Yeah,
right.
being able to forget quickly,
Yeah,
because
move on.
obviously in baseball you're failing essentially as a hitter 70% of the
Yeah,
time, right? But
Baseball's a game.
It's-
It's a game of
it's
failure.
it is a game of failure. So being
Yeah.
able to jump back, and not only jump back from the adversity, but like you said, when the things are going good,
Yeah.
to focus on the things I can still improve upon.
It was Sean Casey.
It was Sean Casey.
Because Sean Casey was talking about how you can never take a day off, right? You only have so many at bats, and if you take, let's say a couple games off a month, right? And then if you do that over 2 months, if you don't feel good, if you have a couple extra pops the night before or whatever, and he says you can't start off the season 0-80, and that's what
0 for
happens
80, yeah.
if you take a few
Oh,
days
yeah.
off for a
You're
couple
starting in
months.
the hole.
So that's a perfect point, Leo. That mental fortitude is what keeps people in the majors.
Well, definitely. I mean, I had a pitching coach, and he gave me good advice. He says you got to be physically relaxed and mentally tough. Because
good.
as a pitcher, you're going to get in situations where you got bases loaded, no outs, maybe 1 out. And most pitchers try to overthrow, but you got to stay relaxed in those situations, as hard as it is. Because once you you guys are hitters. If you try to hit a home run, you tense up, your muscles get tight, you ground ball to
Yep,
second.
can't hit a home
And
run
it's
that
the
way.
same idea with pitching. Like, I was listening to the game today, and Greinke had bases loaded and no outs. And they had Jimenez or whatever that one guy is that just came back,
Eloy
and Abreu and
Jimenez,
somebody
yeah.
else. He struck out 2 guys who got a pop out and
Got out of it.
got out of it.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
So
Well,
I-
because your mindset back in the day, when it was your day to start and you took the ball on the mound, I mean, your mindset was to finish that game.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It was to go 9.
That's certainly a different mentality. And good, bad, indifferent. It's just a different mentality now.
You think of it this way, too, though. And it could be for the betterment of the game. But back then, when you were in Little League, and you had a team that had a good pitcher, he'd pitch all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You never thought about it. And the kid, when you're a kid, you don't get sore anyway. You're young. And then, it went through high school. They'll ride a good pitcher to death if they could.
Sure.
Then even in college back then. But right now, starting even in Little League, when the kids start pitching, they all have pitch counts.
They're giving roles, too.
Then it
set
goes
up,
back. High
closer.
school now, the other team has, and your team obviously keeps track of the pitches. So they're trying to protect a lot of the young kids now. So when we were brought up, we were used to throwing a lot. These kids are in a controlled situation where if their pitch limit is 60, they're going to be taken out of the game. They can't
Build the stamina.
build up to throwing 90 because that's all they're allowed. Then the next year, they might go to 60 or 70.
Right.
But, nowadays, even in the big leagues, I mean, that 100 pitch mark is kind of like, well,
Yep.
I'm done.
That's it.
And you look at different things like shutouts. How many times you see you can't get a shutout anymore?
Rarely.
And
Rarely.
occasionally, even they'll take a pitcher out that has a no-hitter going.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's
Like Kershaw this year. Didn't he have a perfect game or something against Minnesota and they
Hit
took
his
him
pitch
out?
count. Yep.
And in those situations for pitchers don't come along very often. And with my mindset, if I was in today's world, I'd probably go along with not think anything about it. But being a fan now, I'm like, if they ever try to pull me from that game, I'd
I'm
go
not
ballistic.
leaving.
I'd be ballistic.
You're sitting there
I'd be
getting fired
traded.
up.
I'd be traded the next day.
Rosin bag would be thrown down, ball would be thrown into the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, to continue to talk about leadership. So Whitey Herzog was one of your favorite managers, correct?
Right.
So what was it about his leadership style, or how was he in the clubhouse to gain so much respect of the other guys?
Well, for me, I'll just say for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had a lot of confidence in me, and if you look at what Whitey liked, he liked guys that threw hard, and he liked home run hitters.
Mm-hmm.
That was his MO. And fortunately, I threw hard. And he gave me any benefit of the doubt. He figured, if I'm in the 7th or 8th inning, I got a couple man on in a fairly close game. He always had the confidence that I could probably get out of this and didn't have as much confidence in the reliever coming in. So he gave me that leeway. When I first started playing, Jack McKeon was the manager for a short period of time that he was there, that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And not that this is a big thing, but, hey, we're grown men in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And he always had a rule, no hotel bar. Had a curfew after the
Jack
game.
did?
Yeah, Jack did. When Whitey came in, he says, "You got no curfew? The hotel bar is yours because I'd rather you be there because they know you're going to go out and have a drink.
Right.
Sure.
And at least you're in a hotel, and hopefully you can see good enough to hit the button on what floor you're on." But, he
least you're not trying to
treated
drive,
you.
yeah.
He treated you a little bit different. And,
Like a grown man.
yeah, but the funny thing about Whitey, they always had pitches, all the pitchers would get together before a series. And with the catchers, they'd go in Whitey's room. He had a chart, they'd go over the different hitters. He'd never let me into those things.
What's that?
Because he says, you just go throw. Don't worry about
Oh,
hitting this spot and that spot.
He didn't want to get in your head. Like
He's like, just
Because
go
I don't
throw
want
hard.
you, I don't want you to try to hit this corner, that corner. You just go out and throw.
that's awesome.
So
That's
all
awesome.
these guys there, and I'm the only pitcher left in the clubhouse.
So
And
that's
I'm like,
actually
"What's
that's a pretty
going on
good
here?"
leadership lesson, right? We talk about leadership lessons on knowing individual strengths of individual team members, whether it's sports or in a company.
How to
Like,
coach
hey,
individuals.
I got to coach you
Right.
individually because this is what's going to help you succeed the best.
Yeah. And so he gave me that leeway, but just the way he ran, and his theory was, the first 6 or 7 innings are your guys, But once it gets to the later innings, that's when I manage, if I'm going to bring in a reliever, or I'm going to hit and run, or I'm going to do this. So he gave you basically the team the leeway for the first 6 or 7 innings, but the last few innings were his, and that was his theory.
So I've heard you say on another interview that you thought that 77 team was the best Royals team that you ever played on.
Oh,
Is that
definitely.
right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think we won 103 games or something, and then we ran into the
The
good old Yankees
buzzsaw.
again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have anything that when you think about that 77 season, besides the number of wins and it was a great team, anything come to mind that says, man, really what made that so special?
Well, I think the expectations, before you get in the playoff, you always dream about being in a playoff. And in 75, we just came a little short. So 76, we kind of snuck in there, basically. We lost a couple of games in Oakland, and the way Oakland lost to the Angels and Minnesota, we just snuck in there. But we finally got our goal. We're in a playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was only a 5-game playoff, and then you go to the World Series. It was
And there's no wild cards.
no wild cards, no 7-game this, and that was it. So what I would say, we lost to the Yankees, obviously, but I think the expectations for us, we already went through that experience of being in a playoff. And when you go through a whole season, and I don't care who it was, you just put your name on a card, anybody could have managed that team, just like the 1980 team. But, we had guys had career years, and we were obviously losing to the Yankees. We had that playoff, quote, experience, so we were really focused on winning that. And then the disappointment of losing really basically 2 out of the 3 playoffs, in the last innings.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. And for me, being from New York, I said, man, I'm never going to live this down. And finally, in 1980, we beat the Yankees. I said, oh, the monkey's off my back.
Thank
No
goodness.
doubt,
So I said, now I can go home and say, yeah, they got lucky those 3 years, but we got them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it was just a team that, we did everything. The game, when you talk about the game back then also, you got a guy on second. I don't care who was up. They're going to try to move him over. We weren't a team. Nobody was up there trying to hit home runs, as I see today. I mean, there's so many more strikeouts in the game because with 2 strikes, nobody even tries to make contact.
Yeah,
They're trying to go deep.
Yep. So
Every
Mostly
player,
the whole lineup.
Yep.
And back then, we had guys that bunted, we had guys that hit and ran, man on second, no outs, tried to get them over, and then we'd score on a fly ball.
a true team mentality.
Yeah, it was kind of a team.
Yeah.
Now it's a team, obviously, but it seems a little bit more individual. Because baseball is a team, but it's an individual sport.
Do you think the obsession in the last 20 years just with sabermetrics and individual stats and, the way that free agency's evolved, do you think it all just kind of stems from, that lack of team mentality, just more individual because of all of those things?
Well, I definitely think that they're trying to hit home runs, driving runs.
Drives
because
the bigger contracts.
Yeah, they drive a bigger contract.
Yeah.
I mean, and God, there's so many different stats and all this stuff. I have no idea what they're talking about on
We
the
hear
radio
about
anymore.
this. This seems like a common theme with all the different.
This rate, spin rate, war, this, launch velocity, and hey, you know what? The one thing all these things can't measure? What's in your chest.
That's exactly right.
Yep, that's exactly.
And that gets you through a lot of things.
Hell yeah, it sure does. Kind of with your playing, killer years, 75 to 81. I mean, that's your heyday. That's when Leo was really kicking butt. Like the stat the DC said about the what was it? The
wins,
the most wins from right-handed.
wins.
I mean, that's just stupid crazy, right?
Right.
Well, somebody had to do it.
That's right. Hell yeah.
Well, I was reading an article, and people were like, "Oh, was it Vida Blue or was it Catfish Hunter or Nolan Ryan?" No, it was Dennis Leonard.
Yeah, I think Steve Carlton had one more win.
Steve Carlton.
Yeah, one more win in that time
But
period.
he was the lefty.
He was yeah.
He was lefty.
So, World Series in 80, 81, you're still quite the buzzsaw. We get a little bit down the road, get to 83, and something happens.
Well, 82. Don't forget 82.
That's true. You had another.
See, every year, if you look at how I started out, most of the years they were horrible. 3 and 6. And for some reason, when I look back, the team really didn't play that well. And the team not playing well, is a reflection really on the pitcher. You could go out and you give up 2 runs or 1 run and lose. So you got a loss on your column. Then you go out and you give up 6, so then your ERA is high. So when you look at, for some reason, everything started clicking when the weather got warmer.
Right.
It hit about, May.
And
We
you're
started
good to go.
winning. I mean, we were on fire like July, August, and September. I mean, we were almost unbeatable. And, when you think all that thing, in 82, I got hit with a line drive.
Oh, yeah, on your hand,
And,
right?
and it blew out my hand.
Oh wow.
Buddy Bell. Oh no, it was Cal Ripken was up.
Wasn't Cal with your knee, and then Buddy Bell was your hand?
Yeah, Buddy. That's right.
Yeah.
Buddy Bell. And when he hit it, because our mentality was, and I gave up a lot of home runs. That's no big deal, but a lot of them was single shots. I just did not like to walk people. And it was a 3-1 count, and he hit a line drive, and I didn't see it. And I'm fortunate that it broke my fingers and didn't knock my eye out.
Exactly.
Because when it was hit, I knew it was at me, and I put my glove up expecting the ball to hit it, and it didn't. And I kind of moved it to peek with my right eye, and all of a sudden it looked like it was right there, and I just threw my right hand up there, and it hit me directly on the tips of my fingers, so it pushed them in. And when I looked, I go, that doesn't look too good. And I'm flicking it around like this, dancing around the mountain. Old Mickey comes out, don't do that. I said, bullshit, it freaking hurts.
Right. I'm in pain.
So, they had to put it back together, and they did. So I'm basically, and I was off to a pretty good start. And basically, I did get a chance to pitch a little bit at the end. And the next year, I'm off to a pretty decent start again. And this is when Cal Ripken was up. And when I went through my delivery and I threw it, I thought he hit a line drive off my kneecap. It was just like instantaneous pain. And for some reason, as I was falling, I heard the umpire say strike. Like how can
That's
he strike?
confusing.
He just hit me in the knee.
I just had a line drive off my knee.
Yeah, how are you saying strike? And when I went down, obviously, and I grabbed for my knee, and my kneecap was off to the side. And I'm like, that ain't good. So I moved it back over. And, I didn't know the severity of the injury. I know they took me off on a stretcher, and the doctor, they cut your pants and look at your knee, and he's poking around where that patella tendon was, and it was like putting your finger in Jell-O. So back then, hey, when do you think I could pitch again?
Right.
Lo and behold, I never thought it was going to be 3 years.
Yeah.
Never.
So do you think with the like the different technology that they have today, do you think that would have sped it up?
Not for that injury.
It's completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I tore the whole thing off my kneecap.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So they couldn't do anything arthroscopically. And when they went in the first time, they reconnected the tissue and they put a cast on it, And gosh, when that cast came off, I about puked looking at my leg, it looked about the size of my arm. And that ever going through that particular type of rehab, I said, well, it took 8 weeks to get like that. 8 weeks, I'll be right back.
Right.
Yeah, that didn't work out the way I
so
planned,
much.
obviously. And, they kind of figured out after a while that half the tendon had a good blood flow and part of the tendon didn't. So
it
if it
couldn't
was
heal.
if it was just normal life, I could have got away with it, because sometimes they take a piece of the patella to patch something else up.
Okay.
But with the pressures, that they figured out somehow, that they said if you go and try to pitch now, it's going to blow again. So I said, what's my options? So, and this is the weird thing. Schuerholz was the GM then. And he asked me, he says, what doctor do you want to go see? I said, John, you're paying for me next 3 years. I would think that you would know a doctor that is good in this particular situation. And we settled on this guy, Dr. Noyes, out of Cincinnati. And actually, Dr. Joyce, that did my first one, he came with me to Cincinnati. So, he kind of got an idea of how to do it. And they put a cadaver's tendon in me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all well and good. And then you go rehab, and we went to go to spring training. Well, it kept filling with fluid. So I was getting it drained every day. And Mickey Cobb, the trainer, says, this isn't right.
It's not going to keep up.
So somehow or other, they tested the fluid, and they found out I had a very low-grade infection in there that prevented the healing.
Was it from the
But
dead guy?
I guess. That son of a gun. But my body basically rejected it, probably.
Yeah.
So what did they have to do? They went in, took what they put in out.
Oh, they had to put another one in.
Well, they took it out with where they meshed the cadavers in there. So I still had the half that was connected. So they had to let it settle down. Then a couple months later, I went back in. And when they opened it up again, they took something out of the back of my leg to weave it in there.
Jeez.
And, through the whole process, it wasn't a painful rehab. It was just a boring rehab. And if I learned one thing going through all that is patience. Because some days you feel like you want to do more and more and more. And, Mickey Cobb was very instrumental. I mean, he'd be on the road. He'd always check up on me. I mean, and seeing what he went through. And I saw him the other day. He's 80 years old.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and he had, that cerebral palsy and stuff. I mean, he overcame a lot of obstacles. And I said, how can I say no to him?
Sure.
And I know him since I signed. So we know each other for 50 years. And, it worked out that I had that chance to pitch. And, people say, what was your most favorite game you ever pitched? What, most memorable? Well, obviously being in a World Series is everybody's dream. I was in a World Series. Being in a playoff, I was in a playoff. I always remember my first win. It was against Boston in Boston, but I never had to work that hard between starts. And going through all the rehab, the only thing I said, I'm going to pitch again. Just one game. I'm going to get out there. And all of a sudden, the only reason why I was out there on that particular day is because Danny Jackson got hurt.
Got hurt.
Oh.
Yeah, this is. I'm really glad you're bringing this up. This is
He
special.
twisted his ankle. He hit in Fort Myers, he was running in the outfield and hooked his cleat or something on a sprinkler head. So he sprained his ankle. So they said, okay, you're starting. I said, okay, when? And he says, Saturday. I go, oh, shoot, that's a game of the week.
Oh,
Haven't
wow.
pitched in basically 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm pitching in the game of the week. And I'm like, I never really you always get a little bit nervous before a start, but not pitching, I just didn't know what to expect. So I said, okay. So I went through my same routine.
Steak and green beans.
And then, went out there. And as the game progressed, I'm like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And we got further in, and I remember Lonnie Smith was our outfielder in left field, and I forget Barfield or somebody hit a ball, and the umpire called it a home run, but I said, that bounced. So they actually reviewed it, and they said, no, double. So I didn't give up that run.
I didn't know about that part.
So they actually could review it back then?
Yeah, they looked at it. They got maybe they got together with the different umpires.
They just talked,
and they started,
Right.
So they just, it's a double. Then we get to the 6th or 7th inning, and I'm thinking, holy moly, this is nothing. Let's score a run maybe. And we finally did score one run. I'll never forget. It was into the 9th inning, and I think there was one out. Somebody got a base hit, and I think Dick Hauser came out. And he says, I'm not out here to take you out. If I take you out of this game, all these people in Kansas City will hang me.
That's awesome.
And, that was my own little World Series. So, fortunately, I got the second out, and then a former teammate, Rance Mullenix, he was up to bat. He was the last out, and I struck him out. And it was like, wow, did I really do this? After missing 3 years, I go out and throw a 3-hit.
Complete game.
1-0 shutout. And another orchestra, I went home. I said, honey, I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. She goes, well, I can't use the language she said, but it had something to do with, well, you're still under contract this year. You ain't quitting now.
Get back out there. But you know what? That's an amazing story of patience, perseverance, right? Coming back, having your goal, going after that. How did that feel? Like, how was the crowd after you?
Oh, it was really weird when I was going through my different surgeries and stuff. They had little blips in the paper here and there. Obviously, I wasn't the center of attention, but they kind of kept up with a little bit of my progress. Well, he's going in for another operation, and I think overall a lot of the fans are probably, well, that's it.
Wrote you off.
And probably a lot of doctors probably didn't want to tell me that was it. And if they did, I would have said you're crazy. But the Royals won the World Series, in '85, and that particular year. At the end of '85, they put me in 2 games in relief, just for an inning and an inning.
Like September?
Yeah. They already had, it was like 16-0 game, whether win or losing. It was, if I did lousy, it didn't matter.
Just get some work.
So I did just to get my feet wet again.
Yeah.
And so they get into the playoffs, and when they get into the World Series, I'm on the bench for the first 2 games in Kansas City. And I know I'm not on the playoff, the World Series roster. I didn't expect to be. So when they lost those first 2 games, the Royals said, well, you going to go to St. Louis with us? I said, no. I said, I'm going to Florida. I got to do what I got to do to get ready to pitch next year. So I went down to the Instructional League because I knew I had to get my feet under me, get some innings in because, I did so much work on my legs. I didn't really do that much of the arm.
Right.
So I went down there, and it's kind of a funny story. When they won that World Series, I was in Sarasota, Florida, in an oyster bar, drinking beer and eating oysters.
Were you really?
I had that in my notes. I was going to ask you about. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Were you telling everyone at the bar going, yeah, I'm actually a pitcher for that team. I'm just rehabbing.
Yeah. Like they believe me.
I have a note. Ask him about where Leo was the day the Royals won the World Series in 1985, Sarasota.
That's hilarious.
But, I had to do what I had to do. And, I was on, the winning and the losing. And I definitely understand the losing part because we lost the '80 World Series. We lost, the 3 playoffs to the Yankees, especially in the fashion we did. We finally won the playoffs in 1980. You felt the exuberation, everything of winning finally. And, if they went to St. Louis and lost, I know I'm still part of the organization, part of the team, but I had nothing to do with any of it. So there was just a different feeling that I don't want to be part of that if they lose. And so I said, I got to do what I got to do, and I went and did what I had to do.
Right, exactly.
Well,
so I was going to say, with that successful comeback, after '86, did you have any inkling after the season? Did you have any inkling to possibly further the career for another year or two, or were you like, man, I'm good. I've had a great run. I'm just going to call it. Were there any teams that were knocking on the door and saying, hey?
Well, after the '86 season, if I would have known then what I know now, it would have been a different situation. But I saw the handwriting kind of on the wall. When I came up, I saw older pitchers leave because somebody's taking a place. And in that particular situation, they had Saberhagen, they had Jackson, they had a lot of Gooby. They had a lot of young pitchers that haven't really reached their potential yet, but had that potential to do it. And I actually had a 2-year deal on my contract, but I knew they weren't going to renew it. I knew it. It didn't come as a surprise. But what came as a surprise when I had an agent at the time, and he always said, it's my job to communicate with the team, not yours. And everything was stale. It wasn't going to go anywhere. So finally, I said, let me go talk to John Schuerholz. I mean, he signed me.
Sure.
I said, there's two sides of everything. You got the business side, I got the player side. We clashed a little bit here and there, but we're still friends. And so I went in and I said, John, what the heck's going on here? I said, they want to cut my salary 75%. I said, that's just not going to work. I said, he said, well, we had to pay you for 2.5, 3 years when you didn't pitch. I said, John, if I didn't pitch, even this year, nobody would have ever doubted anything. I said, I busted my back to come back and do it. I said, I am looking forward to 1987 because I don't have to worry about my legs. I felt comfortable with it. I said, but I got innings in, and now I just got to build up arm strength again. I said, okay, John, let's do this. Let's go put some incentives in the contract, beef it up. No incentives in anybody's contract. Okay.
Interesting. That was the Schuerholz thing? Like he didn't want to incentivize players' contracts?
Well, let me get to the rest of the story. So anyway, I go home and I'm thinking, what the heck, let's let the agent keep going back and forth. I get a call from Whitey in St. Louis.
I was wondering if that was going to head to St. Louis. Okay.
And he said, would you consider coming over here to play? And I kind of told him what was going on. I said, can you do better than this? He goes, well, not really. And I'm thinking, okay. I said, I would like to play for Whitey again. I said, but if this is my last year, do I want to uproot my whole family and move to St. Louis? I like Kansas City. I can't leave them home and me be there. So me being stubborn, I said, screw it. I quit. I'm done. So I went in, they had a little press conference, and I didn't say anything about it was due to contract or this, that, the other thing. There's no sense burning a bridge, and to this day, I won't burn a bridge.
Sure.
And lo and behold, here comes a collusion. But because I retired, I was left out of the collusion.
Really?
If I'd have known, because at that particular year, everybody was getting offered the same type of money. The owners were trying to get together to lower the salaries. But they came back through arbitration and everything after that. And some of these guys were making $1 million this and $1 million that and $2 million this. So if I'd have known then, I would have played for what they were going to give me.
Sure.
Right.
If I knew there was collusion, but I didn't. So basically, that was the end of that deal.
Yeah, because I think guys like Andre Dawson and Rick
Sutcliffe. There's some other guys that I couldn't remember, but I mean, guys that didn't even have half the stats
that were making
had.
some.
Yeah, that all of a sudden they're getting $1 million this, $1 million that. But hey, I made my bed, I live in it. I got to go to sleep in it.
Well, that's actually a great point, Leo, because a lot of the people that are going to listen to this either weren't born yet about the collusion days or forgot about it, because I remember it, but I didn't really think about it.
How it impacted,
Yeah, because they had that arbitrator that heard all the cases and this, that, and the other thing, but I wasn't eligible because I retired.
Didn't St. Louis have a pretty good year in '87?
I couldn't tell you.
I think they did.
That's all right. But even at that, John Schuerholz gave me good advice. I'm still friends. When he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, I got his number and called him and stuff.
That's cool.
And I called and it went through a voicemail thing. Man, he called me back in a minute because he probably didn't recognize the number. And we talked for a half hour. We were still friends. He started out when I started out, basically.
Right. Well, he was just doing what was coming from up above.
Yeah.
Right.
And, it's kind of a neat deal, though. You can still be friends, and even though we're on different sides of the fence.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
So did you kind of had a trademark look when you threw? When you pitched, you had your handlebar mustache, right? You had the strawberry blonde hair. You had a can of Skull in your pocket. You just had this trademark look that was quintessential Leo. Was that anything by design, or was that just?
No, not really. Look how things changed. I had a red mustache. Now I dye it white. I had red hair. Now it's white. I had Skull in my pocket. Then I don't chew anymore. My teeth fell out.
I love it.
So things have changed. everybody said you look so mean on the mound, but I think it's a point of concentration.
Sure.
I mean, people say, did you hear what people said? Or I said, no. I said, if you hear an individual say something to you when you're out on that mound pitching, your mind is not where it's supposed to be. Now, did I hear noise? Yes.
Noise is different.
Yeah, but I did not hear somebody saying, good job, or you're a piece of crap, or this, that, the other thing, because it takes away from the focus that you're trying to get a hitter out. So, back then, hell, I just
Is that just because you were so laser focused on your individual goals that nothing else could impact you?
And I didn't look at myself. Everybody tells me that, but after the game, I was just like anybody else. Get me off the field and
let's go hang out.
Yeah, have fun.
That's cool. I mean, just knowing that's how you were on the field and knowing your jovial personality, man, like it's such an awesome thing to call you our friend and to know you. I mean, you and I have a pretty good history, right? Like.
Yeah.
15 years ago, I was your casino host.
I know.
Right?
Then you bought my son's house.
And then I bought Ryan's house.
That's right.
I went to high school with your daughter-in-law. And then Craig, my other best friend, he dated, or his niece dated Leo's granddaughter for a while. So, like, we've got all these ties for a long time.
I know, it's crazy.
Such an honor and a privilege to call you a friend and talk about all this cool stuff.
Exactly. Well, and I remember, it was 10 years ago I went to my first fantasy camp, and I remember being on the bus right in front of the hotel and hear all the alumni start coming on, right? There's the Leos of the world and the Georges and all that. And I'm just, at 39 years old, I'm just starstruck, right? And to get to know you on a personal level and hang out when we can, man, it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah. See, but the one thing that I think people don't realize, we're no different than anybody else. I mean, some people take it to an extent. They think that poop don't stink. But most of all, I mean, if you're in a situation where you're on the field, yes, we might have not been able to sign an autograph. But, hey, we put our shoes on the same way. We do everything everybody else does. And like I tell everybody, I said, the difference between you and me is that if you have a bad day, your family knows about it. When I had a bad day, the whole country knew about it.
Good point.
That's pretty heavy.
That's a really good point.
So, but other than that, I mean, we're no different than anybody else. We were just fortunate, and everybody that's an actor, an actress, a singer, or this or a thater, that everybody wants to be, that they never get to be that one type of person, a baseball player, football, whatever it is. You should thank your lucky stars that the good Lord gave you the talent, and you were in the right place at the right time. And somebody believed in you that you could do it.
Exactly. That's fantastic.
There's lots of good stuff there. One thing that you said earlier was that game that you threw, that complete game when you came back in '86, it was your own personal World Series. Like that, to me, I think can be translated to anything anyone's doing if you're overcoming adversity and you're trying to accomplish a goal. Think of it as, this is my time to shine. I'm going to work really hard at it.
And the fans, they made it. They were part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were on their feet standing like they were in the World Series. And this was just, the beginning of the season. And, but I think a lot of them understood what I went through, and they appreciated what I went through.
Yeah, because that was your why. That was your why for 3 years to get back on the mound, right? You had your goal out there.
I'm going to do it.
Exactly. Now, is there anything, because we always want to be mindful of time, but I know you're, involved in, Elks Lodge and Royals Caravan. Is there anything that you'd like to give a shout out to for anything that you're involved with?
Not really. I'm not involved with that much.
Yeah.
I like to go down and fish at Truman Lake.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you hunting at all anymore?
A little bit.
Yeah, like pheasant hunting or?
Yeah, we usually go once or twice a year.
Cool.
But the bird population is way
down.
But
Right?
we met, even if we don't go hunting or hunt that much, we met some fantastic people out in Kansas. I don't know if you ever heard of Liebenthal, Kansas.
Yeah.
You did?
I feel like I've heard of that.
Oh, La Crosse?
I don't know.
La
Liebenthal
Crosse is a
sounds
big
familiar.
town.
I don't know.
Go to Liebenthal.
Okay.
Liebenthal has a big cathedral Catholic church, a beef jerk place, and a bar.
Those are the three things?
Yeah.
That's the three things.
That's town.
I've probably driven through there playing music, honestly. And
You probably had a gig there one night.
Well, if you were in Hayes, if you go south of Hayes.
yeah, I've been to Hayes a bunch. So.
Yeah, if you go south of Hayes, you'll be in Liebenthal.
Okay.
Then you get to La Crosse. But the people we met, I don't know. God, we went out and their kids were young. And, I mean, now they're all graduated. The girl just is going to college on a volleyball scholarship. They kind of became kind of like family. So it's not
That's cool.
about going out and hunting and shooting birds anymore. It's going out and renewing friendships that they treated us so well that, you just want to go out. I like to fish. If we get a bunch of extra fish, we'll bring it out. We'll have a big fish fry. They invite everybody. Have a big fish fry.
Right.
And everything out there, it's so family oriented. I mean, that's what I think I like the best. And, people down where I go fishing at Truman, I got a friend that works at Anglosport. He's kind of retired, but he just goes in 3 days a week. Heck, I go fishing with him all the time. He used to guide, so, I got a kind of little extra, know where the fish are.
Right.
Well, isn't that what this is all about? I mean, that's whether you're
fun stuff you
hunting
like,
or we're talking about playing baseball or doing this.
But, and the amazing thing is, back, the Royals don't do caravans anymore.
Right.
But back then, it was such a big deal that when the players went to these small towns, it was unbelievable. The way
I bet the turnout was
accepted
off the
us.
charts.
Oh, it was. And unfortunately, the world has changed. Everybody's doing it through computers and electronics and all this kind of stuff. But back then, it was kind of a personal thing. And I always contend that the Royals are not Kansas City Royals. It's more of a regional team.
It's the Midwest Royals.
Yeah,
right?
because you're drawing from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas. So it's that big area, and when you go to their little towns, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And being a ball player, the one thing I did take advantage of, you can come out and fish here, or you can come out and hunt here.
Yes,
okay.
I will.
It has perks.
Yes, I will. Let's
Now, if
go.
I wasn't a ball player, I might have not got that invitation.
Right.
So I had to take advantage a little bit.
There's perks,
Now,
absolutely.
Did they keep you with the same group guys? Would there be 4 or 5 of the same guys? Like maybe you and Mayberry or whoever
on the caravan,
on the
yeah.
caravan?
Yeah, but see, back towards the end, the Royal, before they quit them, they had a big old rock star bus.
Right.
This, that, and the
Were
other
they
thing.
still doing it like 10
Well,
years ago?
Oh yeah.
They
Yeah.
quit about 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
ago. Well, basically, it started fading when they started doing that Fan Fest thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It
makes
started
sense.
fading, but when we did it back when we were playing, we'd be in a little minivan or a station wagon. I can't say we didn't have a cooler in it, but we'd go on the road for a week. I mean, we'd leave on a Monday. We'd go to little stops here, little stops.
This is
there.
while you were playing. You guys would do the
in the
caravan
winter. In the winter.
In the winter. Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
we'd go around, but back then, most of the ticket sales were through banks. So we'd go visit and sign autographs in banks in this little town here or over here. We'd go to schools just like they did. And, it was so much fun to do it. I mean, the way the fans reacted, it's like I was telling you before. I said, man, I never realized the passion of a fan.
Sure.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I never realized it until one of the playoffs games. And it was one of the most recent ones in 2015 or something, 2014.
Yep.
And we had something to do at the ballpark, and they gave us a couple of tickets. And I'm sitting in the stands, and nobody would sit down. I'm like, this isn't a football game. It's the first inning.
Right.
What are they doing? And I told Audrey, I said, we're out of here. I left after 3 innings. I couldn't see the field. I wasn't going to stand.
I'm not going to stand for 9 innings.
I said, I could go watch it on TV.
Sure.
But, I mean, when you're in the midst of the fans like that, I never realized the passion of a fan until I was there. Because when you're on the field, like I said, if I'm not playing, you hear people trying to talk you and this, that. But you're in a dugout. You're not in the midst.
Right.
But when you're in the midst, I'm like, holy mackerel, this is totally different.
Electric,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It was really cool for 2 innings.
That's funny.
That's awesome.
Man, well, Mr.
Yes.
Dennis Leonard, man, this has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Oh, not a
hanging
problem.
out with
Yeah.
us. Some
If-
really good
Hey,
stories.
if you can't find somebody, maybe we can make up more stories.
We could do that. We have
could
you
do that.
anytime, man.
We can do that.
Awesome.
So, no, man, thanks again. We appreciate your time and hanging out with us. Good to see you as always, and we'll see you here
I'll
shortly.
see you before then, but hey,
Oh, yeah.
November's going to be here quick.
Oh, we're pumped.
It's-
We're super
time.
excited.
It's on.
Well, everybody, this has been the Always Be Cool podcast with Bobby Kerr and Darren Copeland and our special guest, Mr. Dennis Leonard, Royals Hall of Famer. Make sure to find us on Google, Apple, anywhere else where you listen to your podcast, as well as Instagram and Facebook at Always Be Cool Podcast. Mr. Dennis Leonard, everybody.
Right on. Thank you. All right, we'll
Thanks
see you
so
guys.
much.